Alright, I'm gonna try to do some Peikoff grammar homework stuff. So we're trying to like diagram sentences. For example, Jack is a noun, save. Okay. Then let's see, room is a noun as well. And coat is a noun, and move is a noun. Should totally have not put noun right there. Let's fix that. Undo, undo, undo. Okay, cancel. I'll put noun here. Okay, and then this is a fragment because there's no verb. It's just a noun phrase. Move is a noun here because it's a move. So it's a thing. And wise is a modifier, so that's just an adjective. A basic complete thought is a noun and a verb. Alright, so let's mark some verbs. Then alright, we got our main parts of speech. And then we can go the freehand tool and change the color. And adjective. So like wise modifies the type of noun, so that's an adjective. There might not be any more adjectives here. Alright, well let's do verbs. So removing is a verb. Began is a verb. But, alright, one of these might not be a verb. I have to like look at it more carefully because there's two things in a row. One of them might be like modifying the other one. He began to remove. So to remove is an infinitive. And it is saying what he began doing, so it modifies began. So that makes it an adverb, I think. I have to think about it more, but maybe. Alright, now this whole thing is a phrase here. No. Alright, close. Delete. Okay. Phrase. Oh wait, maybe it's a clause. Jack is the subject and came as the verb, so it's a clause. A phrase doesn't have both a subject and a predicate, which is the verb, it's the what's happening. The subject is what the sentence is about, and the predicate is what it does. What you're saying about it. Anyway, the subject here is Jack, and what you're saying about him is came into the room. It's not a complete sentence because it has when, which means it's going to be like when Jack came into the room, something happened, and it doesn't tell you what. So I think it's a clause. he began to remove his coat is it's a clause that could actually be a sentence. Okay. So came is a verb. I should label that. And began as a verb. And then, so we have the phrase into the room. That is a modifier on came, so it's an adverb. So let's change colors again. All right, adverb. Oh, I just changed the color of the things I already drew. That's really, that was unintended. I would have had to hit save first if I didn't want to do that. Okay, whatever, that's fine. Okay, so came into the room. Into the room is a modifier on came, so that's an adverb. When is also a modifier on came. Like when doesn't tell you something about Jack, it tells you about when he came. So that's also an adverb. Into the room is a adverb phrase. It's also a prepositional phrase because into is a preposition, which the Peikoff hasn't gone over them yet very much, but he talked about them a little bit. And also I've heard of prepositions before, but I can't explain them super clearly in words. Okay, so I know to remove is an infinitive. Oh, his is an adjective. His tells you what type of coat it is. Also, a is an adjective because it tells you about the move. Because you could have said the move, but by saying a move instead, you're saying that it's one move and it's not a specific one. Because if you wanted to talk about a very specific, like that move right there, you'd say the move. A move is talking about a move in general. Anyways, so it tells you, it's giving you some sort of information about the move. Like the difference between it being a or the is qualifying information. Okay, so, well, he is a noun. I should have marked that one. Okay, so then we have the to remove. That is, I think that it's an adverb phrase because it is telling us something about the began. Like began to what? So I'm not super sure about this because he didn't really go over this, but I'm going to call it an adverb. Okay. Am I done? I'm going to call that done. All right, save. All right, coming into the room, Jack began to remove his coat. This is like an awkward thing. Like, I wouldn't write this. I wouldn't recommend it. I find it harder to parse bad sentences that I wouldn't write than good sentences that make sense and are reasonable. So let's just go to red and start drawing shit. So we have into the room again. Tells us about coming. Coming is a verbal. A verbal is a word that's based on a verb but not a verb. It's like it's based on the verb come, but it's not playing the role of a verb, probably, I think. The ing words tended to be verbals. So we have began. Some of this stuff is like the same, like began is a verb again. And then to remove modifies began, and coat is a noun, Jack is a noun, his is an adjective, because it says which coat it is, so it's giving us information about the coat. But then I gotta figure out this beginning part. So the whole thing, coming into the room, is not a sentence. So it's either a clause or a phrase. It doesn't have a subject, therefore it is a phrase. So I'm going to save, and then I'm going to make a little thing. Phrase. Save. Okay, so we got a phrase there. So into the room modifies coming, and then whatever coming is doing is what this type of phrase is. And then this whole phrase is modifying something about the rest of the sentence, either all of it or some part of it. So does coming into the room tell us about Jack? Conceptually it does, because Jack is coming into the room. But I'm not sure that it does grammatically. Coming into the room is an action, so I feel like it's going to be more related to the verb. Yes, it says when he began. Maybe. So the essence here, I could mark like the subject. So the subject of the first one is he, which refers to Jack. The simple subject. And the simple predicate is began. So the like essential concept is he, meaning Jack, began. And then here again, it's also Jack began. Language is tricky. Like, I can read the sentence, and I know what the sentence means. It means that Jack was going into the room, and then he started taking off his coat. Like, I understand it, but coming into the room tells us when he began, tells us what he was doing while he began. It tells us something Jack is doing. There was an example that was similar to this. That was, I might be able to find it. It had darting in it. Oh, here it is. Darting up the wall, the mouse escaped. So this says it's a participle phrase. And participles modify adjectives. I know that because it says adjective right there, otherwise I would have forgot. But gerunds are for nouns, and infinitives are for various things. And these are verbals, so they take things that are words based on verbs, but you're using them in a different way. Like dart is a verb, but darting is not a verb. So darting up the wall is an adjective, according to this. That means it affects the mouse. So it's telling us like which mouse, the one darting up the wall. It delimits mouse because it tells us like the type of mouse. It's a mouse that's darting up the wall. Like, so the base concept is the mouse escaped. And conceptually, darting up the wall tells you something about the escape. But grammatically, it is a thing the mouse is doing. It doesn't modify escape, I think. Okay, so I think that coming into the room modifies Jack. That is my opinion. And since it modifies Jack, that makes it an adjective. So we're going to go like that. Coming into the room, adjective. It's sort of like red colored, Jack began to move his coat. That would be saying that Jack is red colored. Like the red colored Jack would be telling you something about the Jack. This is the coming into the room Jack. I think that's how it works. Again, it's like, I wouldn't actually write this way. Normally I just write like, Jack began to remove his coat while coming into the room. That makes it modify began because it's began while. Well, it makes it modify while, I guess. But that structures it differently than this. Okay, I'm gonna call this good enough and move on. Save. Italy owes a historic debt to her great sculptors, a debt she can never repay. Alright, that last one is a fragment. It's just a noun phrase. Debt is a noun. She can never repay tells you what type of debt it is. It is a debt that Italy can't repay. Like it's too expensive for Italy to repay. So she can never repay is it's a clause because the subject is Italy and maybe it's a phrase. So like you can ignore the never. Never is just an adverb. It modifies repay. Or whatever it is. It's a modifier on repay. So we can just ignore it. And then you have she can repay. So if it was she repaid, that would be a clause. That would be she is the subject and repaid is the predicate of what they did, the verb part. But can repay is a like verb phrase of some sort that I'm not sure exactly what it is. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and make more things. Alright. Can I like take one of my words and copy it? edit, move, call out, color, fill. Nope. Okay. What is typewriter? Okay. Noun. I don't want a period. Verb. Adverb. Adjective. Okay. Oh, it went under 2 lines. That's not good. I need to make it bigger. How do I drag it bigger? These boxes seem like they should help me. Oh, there. I got them to keep showing. I did it. Okay. Now I need to make the font bigger. 20 point. Oh, 16 point. Oh, I see. So after you move it, then you get to resize. Okay, so Italy, noun. Historic, adjective. O's, verb. A modifies debt. So, adjective. Okay, Italy owes a historic debt to her great sculptors. Well, sculptors is a noun, great is an adjective. Her sculptors, that's an adjective. It's telling us about the sculptors. And then to. To is a conjunction. It's combining things, maybe. So to her great sculptors is a phrase. It doesn't have a verb in it. I'm gonna save and then get a highlighter. And then make it green. So to her great sculptors tells us what type of debt. Therefore, it is an adjective phrase. That's my feeling. Wait, maybe it tells us the type of owing. Does to the sculptors modify owes, like it's who it owes to, or does it modify debt? Okay, well, first of all, debt is the object here. Object. It's the object of the verb. Move. Okay. So Italy owes debt is like the essence of the sentence. It's not just Italy owes, that's the noun verb, the simple subject, simple predicate. But also debt is the object. It is a, what's the word? Complement. Debt is a complement. Like, complements are the third most important things in sentences after the subject and the predicate is the complement, which tells you something about the verb that you need to complete the thought. Something like that. And then an object is a complement that is the object of action. So when you have an action verb like hit, then you get an object, which is like hit what. But not all verbs are action verbs, just most of them. There's also like the verb to be. So you have like Italy is small. Small is a complement because if you just had Italy is, then you're wondering is what, and you need to complete the thought. So Italy is small completes the thought and makes it a coherent sentence. However, small is not an object because it's not an action thing. But owing is an action thing. So it is an object type of complement. Anyway, so Italy owes debt is the main idea here. And then a historic just tells you about the type of debt. That's an adjective phrase. So you can ignore that part now when you're parsing the rest of the sentence, because like grammatically it doesn't really matter. It's just content about the debt. But it's not changing like the structure of the sentence. So then you take Italy owes debt, and then you take this other phrase, you have to her great sculptors. And that either tells us about the owing or about the debt, one of those. That's what I'm trying to figure out. So the type of debt it is to her great sculptors. That makes sense. But the type of owing it is to her great sculptors. Like, let's just try to simplify it. So suppose the sentence was, Italy owes debt to John. Or Italy owes a debt to John, if you prefer. One of those. So, yeah, Italy owes debt to John. So is Italy owing to John, or is it debt to John? I feel like it makes more sense that it's telling us the type of debt, so I'm going to call it an adjective, which I already marked. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not super confident, though. And then we do have this fragment over here, a debt she can never repay. Which I talked about a bit earlier. I will do a few lines. So A tells us about the type of debt, so that's an adjective. Debt is a noun. She is a noun by itself, but it's also part of a phrase, she can never repay, which tells us about the type of debt. I don't know what can is. Never is a modifier on repay, so I think it's an adverb. Unless, yeah, I'm not super sure about that either. Because repay isn't like the verb of the sentence. Like it doesn't say he never repaid her. If it said that, then I would know never is an adverb. But repay is being used in a different way here. It's part of the can repay phrase, which I don't totally know about. There's these appositives. John Smith, my uncle, was very famous. My uncle J. Smith, the author of Destiny, was famous. The word ain't is not in good repute. The idea that wealth is important is true. I don't know what an appositive is. I don't know if these are even like, the formatting looks kind of messed up, perhaps. Or maybe they just wanted it to be in a different order, like they wanted a break in the parsing. Because like, you know, it goes 3, and then this thing, and then 4, 5, 6, 7. That's sort of weird. Maybe I should try a color scheme. So, yeah, I'm going to make a color scheme now. So I'm going to write noun, verb, adjective, adverb, and then I'm going to make them all different colors, and then I'm going to write stuff in those colors. And maybe that'll be good. So we color, so noun will be red, verb will be blue, adjective will be, adjectives are green, and adverbs are yellow because when I go to freehand, those are the colors that show up by default as these. Okay. Oops. Undo, undo, undo. Cancel. Okay. Trying to center it a bit. Okay, so now I can quickly like underline stuff and set the color on it. Like, I now have the adjective underliner. So famous is an adjective because it's modifying uncle. My is an adjective. My is an adjective. It's a little messy. Bear with me. You know what? Now that we did this already, I'm just gonna save. Okay. Oh, is there an undo button? Mistake. I don't know what I just did. I'm gonna zoom way in. Alright, what I'm trying to do is select the word verb. It's not selecting the correct thing. Plus I've like managed to highlight a word I didn't want to highlight. What just happened? I don't know how to remove that highlight. Maybe I can just fix it. So it's a noun. So I'm gonna go to red and then highlight it. Cool. Alright, save. I'd still like if I could select the verb. Nope. That's not good. Whatever. Alright. So John Smith, my uncle. We need uncle. Uncle is uncle is a noun. Okay, very modifies famous. That makes it an adverb. Adverbs don't just modify verbs. They modify four things. They modify verbs, other adverbs, adjectives, and like whole phrases and clauses in the rest of the sentence. Something like that. Okay, so adverbs are yellow. And then verbs are blue. So was is the verb here. Okay, this is working a bit better, I think. The color scheme's good. Save. So I'm just going to skip this one. I wrote too much shit over it. The word ain't is not in good repute. Okay. So is the verb. Undo. Right, is. So ain't is a noun here. So let's get the nouns. Like, ain't is actually the subject of the sentence. And yeah, all right, that's it for nouns, I think. Then gonna get adjectives. Green. So the word are adjectives because they tell us about ain't. They tell us it's the rather than a, and they tell us it's a word. And is the verb. So it's the actual concept here is that ain't, like the word ain't is, and then not in good repute is an adjective phrase because it's telling us something about ain't. So as a group, not in good repute is an adjective. You can also look at it individually and then try to see what stuff is. Like if you just had not in good repute as a sentence fragment, how would you diagram it? You would say there's no subject or verb. You would say something is not in good repute. So the something and the is are both missing because it's just a modifier. But like, how do you break it down? So good modifies repute. Not modifies repute. Because it's like, rather than having repute, it doesn't have repute. So that tells us about the type of repute. It's like reverse repute. Or lack of repute. Like it has a low amount of it instead of a high amount of it. So I think that not is telling us about the repute. Then in is one of those little connecting words that we haven't gone over. Possibly a preposition. Okay, so as a whole, this is as a whole, it's an adjective. Right, now the next one, the idea that wealth is important is true. So the main essence of the sentence is wealth is important. Wealth is the noun and the subject. Is the verb and the predicate. And important is the complement. But not the object because it's a state, not an action. Is true modifies idea. Oh. So there's different things here. Like, wealth is important is one like major clause, but also the idea is true would itself be a sentence. And that wealth is important modifies idea by telling us which one. So this is bad writing because this is something Peikoff mentioned in the first lecture, is you want to have the main idea you're writing about in the sentence be in the main clause. So if you have like two clauses and one is the primary clause and one is like a secondary lesser clause, you want the main thing you're writing about to be in the main clause. So I think that the main clause grammatically is the idea is true. And I think that that wealth is important is the subordinate clause that's modifying the main one. It's telling us something about the main idea. However, that wealth is important is actually the important part of the sentence. So I think the important part of the sentence is in the subordinate clause. Oops. Did not mean to undo all of those. All right. I'm gonna keep going. I don't know all the answers, but I'm trying to work it out. And then I figure in lecture 2, Peikoff is going to go over the homework because there's no answer sheet that I saw. So you just go to the next page and it's just lecture 2 stuff. So I figure he'll go over it in the lecture. So having thought about it will make me learn more. I'll understand better because the stuff he says will be addressing questions I thought of. Okay, so let's start with nouns. Learning may be easy if you're learning from a good teacher, but teaching is work. So like work is a noun. Undo. Okay. Work is a noun, teacher's a noun. Are learning, I think learning there is an adjective that modifies you. It's telling you about the state of the person. So learning may be easy. So learning is the noun, like it means the concept of learning may be easy, like the thing. Okay, and then we're gonna go to verbs. So be is the verb, are is the verb. Oh, I forgot to noun you. I'll come back to that. Is, oh, cancel. Oh, I changed the color. I have to save between things. All right. So quickly, learning, you, teacher, work. Oh, teaching also, noun. Teaching is a thing. Oh wait, work is an adjective here. My bad. All right. So save, but then I'm gonna change the color of this one. I don't know how to do that. That's not what I wanted to do either. How do you, like, clear it? Oh, erase? That's not working. Okay, I know how to write over it, so I can go to adjective and write over it and save that. And I can go to highlight and I'm gonna Google this. Goodreader remove highlight. Can't find a way to remove highlight. It's totally one of their FAQ questions on their website. Tap a highlight briefly. Oh, okay, save. Aha! So like if you press and hold on it, you can't delete it, but if you tap it really fast, you can delete it. Doesn't seem to work though. Oh, I think I had like many highlights on top of each other or something. Yeah, I guess I was stacking things. All right, so we're gonna green the work because it is a adjective. Learning is also adjective, and easy is adjective because it's modifying the noun. Okay. Save, and then I want to do some verbs. So is verb, are and be. Okay, save, then go to green. So good modifies teacher, that's totally an adjective. A modifies teacher, also adjective. From is one of those like it's a grammar word rather than a word about stuff. So it makes like the phrase from a good teacher. So I think that it's part of an adjective phrase. You are learning from a good teacher. Tells us about the type of learning. So I think that that whole thing, from a good teacher, is a adjective phrase. No, sorry, a adverb phrase because it modifies learning, which is an adjective. And if you modify an adjective, that is not an adjective, that's an adverb. Okay, anyway, save. I want to go to adverbs. So may is an adverb because it modifies easy. I mean, be. It's not just be, like, it's may be. It's qualifying the being as being a maybe. Being, like, it's not a definite sort of being, it's a hazy, vague sort of potential being, kind of. And then, yeah, I don't really know what to do with, like, if and but. I'm gonna keep going. Alright. Red for noun. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. So, I'm going to do things a little differently. Like, I'm going to call the world a noun phrase. Note. What's note? Is note's a verb here. I think will note is a verb phrase, and little is an adverb because it modifies the noting. Okay, so save, change colors, yellow for little, save, change colors, and then verb, will note. Okay, so we have nor, long, remember. So the world, remember. So remember's verb. Long is adverb, it modifies remember. And nor is a conjunction, a grammar word that helps with phrases in some way. Not going to worry about it too much. But it's like, it's organizing the sentence of the structure itself, rather than being one of the words that's directly about what I'm saying. Okay, and then what we say here. Well, I'll save and adverb long. Okay, then what we say here is a phrase. What we say here is the object of noting. So the world will little note what we say here. So like what is the object? And we say here is telling us about what the what is. What we say here is a noun phrase. It's like this whole thing is a noun. It's a thing. They will little note the thing, which is what we say here. Now, but is conjoining another clause or phrase. Let's see. It can never forget what they did here. So, it can never forget is it has a subject, it, and a verb, forget. So if it is the noun, they is also a noun. All right, save, and then go to verb. Verb is forget. So what they did here is a noun phrase. But if you look at it individually, it's like how previously we had say. What we say here, say is a verb, but the whole thing is a noun phrase. And here we have, I'm going to mark did as a verb individually, but it's part of a noun phrase. Here is an adjective. No, adverb. It tells us about the did, I think. Yeah, it's telling us like where they did it. So, not save. So you can like mark stuff multiple ways because it's part of a phrase and the phrase has a part of speech as a whole, but also the individual things have a part of speech. So the what here is a noun because it refers to a thing. It doesn't make sense on its own though, like it would be really incomplete. And then I'm gonna freehand go to red for noun, and then we can go, we're gonna bracket that part as a phrase. Like, phrase. Noun phrase. So this makes sense. I bracketed that area as a noun phrase, but then I individually highlighted the words in the phrase. All right, never, it can never forget. I think never is an adverb, modifying forget. Is that right? Yeah, I think it tells us something more about the action. And then I think that like can never is a adverbial phrase. Right, and then this entire thing, but it can never forget what they did here, is a clause. And what type of clause is it? So the world will little note is a clause, but it wouldn't be a complete sentence because it's missing like note what. So we have like the clause. That's like the main clause. Then what we say here is a noun clause, which is the object of note. Nor long remember is an aside, which is like in addition to not little noting, it will also not long remember. So it's like telling us that the world will do two things, one little note and two long remember. So it's like a second verb, and it's just trying to give us two verbs at once. And then this final part, but it can never forget what they did here. So the world can never forget. It's telling us about the world, but I don't think it's an adjective, even though it's telling us about the world, which is a noun. I think it's just like a third thing. Like it's telling us three different things. There's three thoughts in one sentence. That's how I read it. I don't know all the like rules of parsing because he didn't actually go through them all in the lecture. Like we went through like the basic stuff like noun, verb, adjective, adverb, but he didn't like fully explain how to deal with stuff like but and or and like multiple clauses and stuff and how to diagram everything. Oh man, this Atlas Shrugged number 7, the Atlas Shrugged quote is very long, and it's all one sentence. It's a long sentence. It is not enough that a man do the right thing, that his acts be accord with duty. The moral man must act from duty. He must do his duty simply because it is his duty. I feel like this is getting a little repetitive, so I'm going to skip that one, and I'm going to go to the Atlas Shrugged one, because Atlas Shrugged is way cooler. So I will just start marking some nouns, I guess. So like Taggart Terminal is a noun. This is a noun. This was the Taggart Terminal. Wait, maybe Taggart Terminal is an adjective because it's telling us about this. Like if you say this was a good thing, then a good thing is an adjective because it tells you about this. So maybe I'm doing it wrong. Let's make it an adjective. So like the Taggart Terminal is telling us about this. So this is a noun. She's a noun, like room. Room's a noun. Not the giant concourse in New York, so concourse. This was her goal. So this is like this is verbing here. But in this room, it's not verbing. The end of the track is a noun phrase because the whole thing, the end of a track, is a thing. Wait. And maybe it means this was the end of the track. It has like implied words. As they had drawn. This was the goal. Alright, I'll save that so far and go back and fill in some other colors. So verbs. Was, thought. This was, she thought. Was her goal. Undo. The end of the track. The point beyond the curve of the earth where the drawing her for. Drawing is a verb. Or no, it's a verbal. Undo. As they had drawn. Had drawn is a verb phrase. Had seen. Was No, no, no. Alright, we got some verbs marked a bit. Let's try something else. Oops, cancel. Alright, adjectives. So this room tells us about what room it was. Undo, cancel. Okay. So to this room, which one? Like the giant concourse? In New York tells us where the concourse is. Her goal is the complement. Like, this was her goal. It's not an object because was isn't an action verb, but it's the complement. If you just say this was, people are like, this was what? So this was her goal. Her goal is the object, and then her modifies goal. It tells you what type of goal. So then the question is whether goal is an adjective telling you about this, or whether it's a noun. Because a goal is a thing. I think it's an adjective phrase. Which makes her an adverb because it's modifying an adjective? No, that doesn't seem right. Like, I think it's an adjective phrase, but her is an adjective modifying the noun goal. No, I'm confused. I asked my friend. So, being a goal is an attribute of this, I think. But a goal is also a noun. Alright, my new idea is that when you say this, that identifies the thing. And then when you say her goal, you're talking about an attribute of the thing. And you're not identifying the thing like a noun does because it's already identified. You're just talking about the already identified noun. So it's an adjective. That's my idea. So the end of the track, same thing, tells you about this. The point beyond the curve where the two straight lines, blah, blah, blah. Also a adjective phrase because it's telling you about the this. Drawing her forward. This was drawing her forward. Tells you another thing about this. I think. So I'm gonna then go to like the little highlights or the other type of highlighting so I can do more stuff. Because like I want to take the point beyond the curve of the earth where the two straight lines of rail met and vanished and break that down more. Like for example, lines would then be a noun within that phrase. And then of rail is an adjective, even though rail itself would normally be a noun. We're using it as an adjective to tell us what type of line. So, of rail. To, straight, the. Those are all. Oh, that's interesting. The highlight on the words runs into the underline on the line above. That's unfortunate. That makes the colors super confusing. So I'm actually not going to do this. Because then I won't be able to read my underlines. So I'll just have to use freehand. So I was calling lines a noun. Oh wait, I will use strike through. Let's try this and see what happens. Okay, cancel. Alright, strike through. Lines. Alright, save. Strike through. Adjectives. So we had of rail, and we had the, to, and straight. And backing up, we had the point is a noun phrase, and the is an adjective about point. And beyond modifies point, so that's an adjective. So the adjective, beyond adjective. Then the curve of the earth. So the curve of the. Oh, no, the curve is the noun phrase, and then of the earth is modifying it. So, of the earth. Then where are the two straight lines? Like, where is part of the later adjective phrase? And we can, like, mark the as an adjective, or we could mark it as part of a noun phrase with point and curve. Like, the point and the curve are noun phrases with a noun and an adjective. Okay, and then the met and vanished is giving us two different verbs. The two straight lines of mail. The two straight lines of rail met and vanished. So the two straight lines of rail met. The two straight lines of rail vanished. So those are both verbs that are both being applied. I'm not sure about this drawing her forward thing. I think like this was drawing, or the was drawing is like a verb phrase. Yeah, I don't actually understand it in detail. Alright, I'm gonna call that good enough for now. I'm gonna go on to the next part. Oops. Okay, save. Identify any errors in the use of modifiers. The bell sounded loudly and clearly, and still waters run deeply. But even so, I feel real well. Well, you're supposed to feel really well. So that's a thing. Really well. color. Let's go back to orange. Then freehand. Okay, really well. There's problems here, like, besides the use of modifiers. Like, the three different sections are unrelated. Clauses. They're clauses. Like, bell sounded, waters run, and I feel are all subject predicate. So each one is a clause. So there's three separate clauses. And I guess I'm just supposed to look at them separately because they don't really go together. So the bell sounded loudly and clearly. So loudly and clearly are both adverbs that modify sounded. They don't modify bell. They modify the sounding in this particular case. And that seems correct. I think that's correct. Still waters, still is an adjective. Waters is the noun, run the verb, and deeply, run deeply. So deeply looks like an adverb modifying how it runs. The actual content here is nonsense because still waters don't run. So like that's a content error, but I guess I'll write it down. Okay, save ABC. Still waters don't run. Like the modifier makes no fucking sense. Okay, done. Freehand. Okay, save. This is the first time I've like really needed my Apple Pencil. Because this would definitely be worse and harder without it. Okay. Right, so is deeply a type of running? I guess so? I want to think of like an example where it makes sense. Like you can breathe deeply. Deeply is definitely a valid adverb in general. And you can run quickly. Run is a verb that can certainly take an adverb in general. But can you run deeply? Like I get the concept they're trying to get at, which is that the running happens deeply underground, I think. Or that the water is deep. So it's like, 50-foot deep water instead of 10-foot deep water. The still ones. When they're running. But see, that's like, those are attributes of the water itself. Maybe it should be still waters run deep. Or better, still waters are deep because they don't run. So I think there's a problem there. I'm having trouble saying exactly what the problem is, but are deep? Alright. What's even so mean? So like, I feel, subject, predicate, real should be really because it's feel, it's an adverb. I'm gonna mark it, I guess. Adverb. I mean, it's supposed to be an adverb. Um, But like really is the adverb, real is the adjective. Oh, really here doesn't modify feel, it modifies well. So I feel well. Well is an adjective about me, and then real or really is modifying it. Okay, I'm moving on. Or no, wait, I wanted to look at the even so. I don't know what they are. I'm gonna highlight them or something though. Other color. Wait, I thought I just chose an other color. There. Save, and then I will put my notes next to it. Alright, we drew some fairly legible question marks. Right, where vacation dissatisfaction existed, so dissatisfaction, or no, vacation modified dissatisfaction. It's the vacation is the type of dissatisfaction. That's like a little unusual, but it's okay. Advanced recreation planning had been insignificant. That is unusual. If I was writing that, I would probably hyphen it. Like advanced recreation planning, I would put hyphen so it's like one unit. And I think that would make it more readable. I might also hyphenate vacation dissatisfaction, because it's like an unusual construction, and if you hyphenate it, it makes it easier for the reader to figure out what's going on. Okay, advanced recreation planning had been insignificant. A problem particularly acute among mathematics students who forget basic philosophy principles. So this needs to be like a problem that is particularly acute, is my first thought. Save. ABC. That is a problem that is particularly acute among mathematics students who forget basic philosophy principles. This one's like tricky because like it's kind of nonsense, but that doesn't make it grammatically wrong. So it's like where the mold existed, mushroom picking had been insignificant. A problem that is or that was particularly acute among mushroom pickers who are lazy or who hate mold. Like, I think the actual syntax is all right. Newspaper headline: Macmillan refuses bank rate rise leak probe. Bank rate rise leak probe. So there was a bank rate rise proposal or something like that. And then it was leaked, and then there was a probe about that. So like if I was writing this, I would definitely hyphenate it. I would go like so putting bank rate rise as one unit makes it clearer to the reader what the fuck is going on. So then they only have to deal with Macmillan refuses, and then there's 3 things afterwards instead of 5. So Macmillan refuses, bank rate rise, leak probe. It's confusing, it's bad writing, but like, bank rate rise modifies leak, and leak. What type of leak is it? It's a leak about bank rate rises. What type of probe is it? Is a probe about the bank rate rise leak. What type of rise is it? A bank rate rise. What type of rate are we talking about that rose? Like a rate rose, what type? A bank. So it kind of makes sense. All right, so I'm gonna watch lecture 2 soon, and hopefully he'll like spend a long time going over this, and then it will be really interesting because it'll answer all the parts I was a bit confused about and make them all clear. And that used up 20% of an Apple Pencil. How do you cancel this? Besides hitting home. Maybe you just have to hit home. Alright, I'm done.